Hello and welcome to my channel. It's Swan here, and I'm going to do an A5 loose journal spread, and this is a challenge project that doing through an art journaling group that I have linked to my Facebook page, Catagunya. And so our main challenge is to use a napkin or serviette, whatever you call them. And what I've done is chosen one out of my stash, and I've chosen this beautiful peacock. So as you've seen, I have already removed the layers, so it's actually a 3-layer serviette. So I've actually taken the other 2 pieces of the napkin off, and I will keep those, and I use them at some point. I do use one of them during this project, and I will save the other one for another project. I just stamp on them and use them as backgrounds and as texture, etc. So I've cut that out now, ready to play, and I will start on my art journal. So this is a Deca Art crackle paint that I've just purchased through Amazon. I found the idea of it from Swan Presents, and I thought I'd give it a go. So I'm grabbing this Tim Holtz stencil, very dirty stencil, but I love this particular one. I think it'll go well. So grabbing one of my new palettes, this squarish one with the rounded edges, and I'm going to grab some of this paint, and I'm taking it through the stencil onto a couple of spots on this spread. So it actually spreads beautifully, and being the name paint, it actually you would be able to add it as an actual paint. So I realised I didn't get right to the edge, and so I've just replaced the stencil over there and added it right to the edge. So I'm just trying to work out where I can place it without it interrupting with the actual peacock. So I'm putting it at that bottom corner as well, and I'm also going to add it to this top corner here as another bit of texture. So I clean off my palette knife, of course, and I will clean off my stencil. That's the only time I'll really clean off stencils, is when I'm using pastes like this that will actually dry and set. As if it dries on your stencil, it is often very hard to get off later off. So I just clean that off, as you see, and I will also clean my desk. Even though I don't mind mess, this type of mess really doesn't work well when you're doing journal pages. So now I'm going to grab my heat gun in a second, and I'm just going to set this paint. So I've already set it. It's nice and dry, and I'm now going to grab my woodies. Now woodies are a Stabilo product, and it came with that particular sharpener, and I actually just made up a container to put it in and stuck the sharpener beside it. So now I'm going to grab one of the background pieces of the napkin, and I'm going to grab some of my stamps, and I'm going to make my own background. So I'm just randomly placing this, no particular order, just grabbing a little bit more of the black archival ink and placing it all over the napkin in spots. And as you can see, it's some places it's very pronounced, other places it is less subtle. So now I'm grabbing another stamp. This one is a Kazaz one, and it has music notes on it, and I'm actually using one of the blues of my archival inks. Not sure exactly what colour it is, but I will find out for you. It's one of the lighter colours. Now I'm also going to use this particular stamp. This is a Carabella one, and it's got some beautiful little round circles with text and butterflies, etc. on it, and I'm just randomly placing that. And this time I'm using the grey, which is the watering can archival ink, and I'm just again randomly placing it over the napkin. So next I will grab another stamp, and this one's from Paper Artsy, and there's a whole lot of mark making ones, and I'm just grabbing the dots, and I'm using my new red archival ink and placing it all over in spots, and it actually really pops nicely, and that's the close-up of what the final result is. So once I'm happy with that, I'm going to tear it and use part of it as the part of the background and part of the texture on this. So I'm actually using now the Montmark acrylic medium gloss, which I purchase currently from Artshed, and that Montmark also has a matte one which I'm going to purchase, which I've got on order, and I'm going to use the Mod Podge brush that I purchased off Amazon. Now it has really not so deep bristles on it, and it spreads quite easily. Now I will warn you, when you're using napkins are very fragile. They will break up quite easily once they are wet, so you have to be careful not to go over and over. It's not like using rice papers or even just standard copy paper or deli paper. This is very fine and it will tear, and I do have one of those accidents with part of the napkin later on. So I'm going all over the page with this particular medium, mainly because I'm going to be using the woodies, and the woodies, while they're a watercolour, they actually go a lot better on a medium, and gloss is the better medium when it comes to watercolours and actual catching to the page. I just find they work better, you get a better flow, and doesn't soak into the actual paper. So this is the first time I've used the woodies, so other than the swatch sheet, and I'm just going to be randomly scribbling, and I'm using a mop brush that I purchased from Montmark as well, and just adding some colours that go with the actual napkin and mixing them up and just giving it some type of colour background. So I'm going to layer and layer and layer this, because the more colours you have, the deeper it is, and it'll go better with the actual napkin, and the napkin will sit nicely, hopefully, on the background. So while I'm using this, I'm actually going to just quickly bring in the swatch sheet I created and show you, and then I will dry off this layer and so I've grabbed the gesso that I had left over from a project I purchased from Remy Smart Arts, and it's a thicker gesso from 13 Arts it is, and it's I thought I'd start using it up, and it's actually quite beautiful to put on. I'm very impressed, because I haven't actually used a thick gesso before, and it goes beautifully on, especially with your finger. It actually is quite, because it looks like a foamy type of product, and like rubbery, which it would explain because it is an acrylic base. So I put that on the page. Now I'm actually grabbing a tub of water and a smaller water brush, and I'm going around the actual part of the napkin that I want, and so I'm carefully just doing a wet line, and the tissue comes away so much easier, and it has that rougher edge, which means it blends in nicely with where you're placing it on your piece. So I just carefully do that. Again, be very careful. It should only remove the areas that you've actually wetted, but just be careful as you're going and not be too rough. So you just do a line with the brush wet and then just go around where you're cutting it out, and it works beautifully. And it's so much easier than trying to tear it by hand. As you can see, I've actually also added some other pieces of the napkin onto the page. Now I'll have to blend them in at some point to get a good fix in that, but I'm just going to dry them off. So what I thought I'd do is I'd actually use the crackle paint and actually use that like I would a gesso, and I'm just going around some of the areas and adding a little bit more crackle, as because I sealed the previous one, the crackle wasn't so obvious in the final product because I sealed it, so it didn't allow the colours to get in. So this is another way that I just found that I could get some more crackle. It's only lightly on, so I'll get a very fine crackle with it, but I found it worked well. So I'm just going to heat that off, and then I'm going to get back in with my woody colours, and I'm actually now just doing some lines, scribbles, having fun. So adding almost a rainbow across there with some of the cool colours, and I'm coming in from the other angle with some of the warmer ones, as I brought in a pink because I put those particular like forget-me-not kind of flowers. I actually brought in some pink like a salmon into the layout, so I'm going to be adding that colour as well. So I'm just kind of creating a cool rainbow on one side, or can't think of the wording of it, but just adding a layout like that and then mixing some of the colours. I've now got it just on a slight lean using the cap bowl I've got there to hold it on an angle so that it drips down. So now I've added some of the pink and I'm going to add a bit of blue, which is in the background of the napkin, and that's what I'll just continue doing, cleaning the mop brush off, coming in with some clean, drying it off so I'm not putting so much water on. Remember, these mop brushes do hold a lot of water because they're actually made with a synthetic, I think this one's a synthetic, but it acts like a lot of the fur, like squirrel fur and stuff, where it actually retains a lot of water, which is it's great with watercolour, fantastic. So I'm just adding some dark in the corner, and as you know from a Stabilo oil pencil, it's doing exactly that. It's basically a child's version of a Stabilo oil pencil, but it means getting these pencils. Yes, they're not cheap. They're about $60 Australian. I think that was the price that I got them for on Amazon, but I think they're going to last a little while because I've hardly put a dent in the pigment in that particular lead that's there. I really don't think they would break down very far. I'm also doing some, once I've got a lot of colour on the brush, I'm also doing some splatters. So now that that's dry, I'm just going to check the area where I'm going to be putting the peacock, making sure that I'm not putting too much colour. You've got to, for those that may not have used napkins before, if the area is coloured behind, it will darken the actual napkin when you place it on. It really is helpful if it is white behind the napkin, therefore what image is actually there on your napkin will be a lot brighter and you can see it better. So I'm just again continuing to add some more colour onto the page, and I'll just speed this up and rush this through a little bit so we can get through for you. So I've done as much as I can, and I'm just going to recheck the layout for the peacock, and again I've gone over the area. So I'm just grabbing the gold pencil and outlining where I want it placed, and just so I know what area not to go in, so that'll give me a better catch on exactly where I'm placing it. As you see, the area that's white and the area that it should be, there's a big difference. So I'm going to come in with the thick acrylic Mart Dimension paint, and I'm going to paint the area. this will whiten it up and allow for the napkin to be a lot brighter, as I was saying previously. So I just thickly add that up and then I will dry that off. So now it's dry and white, and I'm just going to go back around the edges with the gold pencil, as I think that will suit the actual background, or like a glowing part of the actual mandala and the peacock that I'm going to place on there shortly. So once I've put as much gold on as I think it needs, I'll dry that off. And then I will go to the next stage, which is doing some splatters, of course. So I'm just going to add some white, trying to splatter in a different method, and it comes up quite well, I thought. And just getting a lot of pigment onto a brush and then splattering it from there. So I just thought I'd try to see if it worked, and it seemed quite fitting for what the project is. So now I'll get my Mod Podge brush in and I'll grab some of the glue and place that on as careful as I can, starting from the top and working my way down. So I do try to be very, very gentle with this so I don't lose it, and as you can see, did it fit fully in there? And look, there we go. I have created, I suppose I shouldn't sped the video up, made me tear the page. Not really. So I'm just going to fill in the areas that were too white around the edge where I didn't actually place it properly, and wet that down just to merge that through. And while I'm doing this, I'm thinking how I can actually fix this napkin tear that I've done in the face, because it's probably the most important part of the actual project, is that the head of the peacock. So what will I do is the hardest part to think of, is what will I do about it. So what I decided to do now, because I had the accident with the head of the peacock, I was going to replace it. So I was going to go around it with a brush and water, and I decided, no, I'm going to take the easy way out. I'm going to cut a square around it. It may be easier to put down rather than the delicateness of just the head. So I glued that down as gently as I could and lined it up. And I think I lined it up quite well, and I don't think it's that obvious, but if you look closely you can see it's actually darker at that particular part of the layout, which is a shame, but at the same time, with the shading and the light that I added to it, I think it worked quite well. So what I'm doing right now is I've got some Montmartre liquid, I just lost that, liquid gold basically, so it's exactly the same as the gold leaf, but it's paint. So it goes on and it has the same shimmer as gold leaf does when you place it on, but you have total control of where it's going to be. Where if you've played with gold leaf, it can be very fickle to which parts of the glue it sticks onto, and it can take a while to get a perfect line around an item like this. And all I had to do was grab a brush and paint around it. Makes it so much easier, and it dries quickly, and I think it adds a really cool glitter touch. So I'm umming and ahhing about wording on this and adding a butterfly like what is in the actual tissue. So while I'm thinking about that, I'm grabbing some white and some black, and I'm using the white and black Stabilo oil pencil. And as you would know from my uses of the all Stabilo, and including the woodies, it is a water activated product, very dark inked, and you can create such really awesome gradients of the dark and light, or whatever colour you're using. So I actually now own the white, the black and the blue, and I'm contemplating getting the brown one as well. But I do have the Stabilo woodies as well, so I can use that, but it doesn't give you that fine edge, of course, because it's a very large lead on it. But you can, probably would have, as you see, I actually used it to colour in the light side of the actual peacock, and that lightened that side up quite well. So what I'm actually doing now, I'm actually adding some doodling with a paintbrush and the gold, liquid gold. So just adding some dots on the breast of the peacock and in the crown and around the eye. I thought it really needed that. So I'm also emphasising the eye and some of the lines around the peacock because of the shading I just provided to it. And excuse me, and using my archival pen that I use quite often with that. So I'm also now coming in with a Toolie Art paint pen and just adding white to the eye, to the eye reflection. I always do that with my eyes because it just adds, I just find it looks so much better if you emphasise that little sparkle. So I'm just going around edges, fine-tuning up some of the shading and highlighting, trying to get 100% happy with it. Add some extra lining, adding some doodles around the circles just to make it pop, and it kind of when I looked at it, it kind of to me blended it better and emphasised the circle that I've got lightened in the actual location of where I've got the peacock, so it worked really well. So just trimmed off some of the edging, and I'm drying off the Stabilo oil pencils. I've got a frog in my throat, I feel. And just adding some more colour, because you never have too much colour. Well, you do, but I don't. So I'm also going around the edges with the white woody, something different. I normally go around with the black, and I actually can't remember if I actually do go around with the black in the end. So I'm using my finger to add some white, and I'm actually dabbing off because I realised I was hiding one of the flowers, so I actually rub that back to actually the flower so that I could actually see that. And then I'm adding some more woody and trying to keep the flower obvious and blending some of those colours. So I'm blending the dark blue with the teal colour and adding some of the lime as well to try to blend that area, because that area had been trouble all through the project. So I'm just trying to blend it in a bit better. So now I've added some lime at the top of the page, and I'm getting, look how much pigment on that brush. So I'm adding quite a bit there, and I'm actually letting it bleed. So I'm actually going to add, it actually will add some bleeding onto the page of that lime. You can't see it at the moment because what I'm doing is that with that mop brush actually keep squeezing water to get it to continually run. As you can see, I've got a little puddle there on my table from that particular use, and I'm adding as much pigment as I can to get some true flowing of that particular lime. And I really have a weak spot for lime anyway. I love the colour. I think it's gorgeous, and it goes so beautifully with teal and blue and purple. So just drying that off as it's quite wet, and then I'm still deciding how to finish it. I probably get more problems on finishing a project rather than starting a project, but I will add some dots to the page, some splatter. Diane Wakely actually calls them pocks. I think it's a great feedback because basically it goes everywhere, and I don't know if you've got items that you keep on your desk where you actually splatter and how much splatter ends up on it. And because this is the gloss paint, it actually dries quite obviously on the page, which is quite hilarious. So now I'm nearly finished, and I'm still looking for some words to place on here, and I ended up finding the word songbird. Not sure why that caught my attention. I suppose because I really do enjoy listening to a peacock make its noise. So that's it for this project. I hope you enjoyed the challenge for all those in my art journaling group, and I will see you in my next video. So happy art. Bye.